This video is proudly sponsored by AG1 by Athletic Greens. One of the things I've been trying to stress to myself as of late is properly fueling my body with the vitamins and nutrients it needs. So what if there were a one-stop shop of sorts to help me fulfill this goal? Something with over 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that's simple to take. Well, that's where AG1 by Athletic Greens comes in. When I first tried this product, I was skeptical. I never had a green powder before, and I've always had this fear it'd be like drinking cardboard. But to my surprise, it's rather tasty. It's a really nice blend of some of the best ingredients available. And best of all I need is 1 scoop and 8 ounces of water. Then shake. Drink once a day. Not to say anything, but I did feel an uptick in my energy when I used it for a few days. Best of all, you can get a year's supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 travel packs for free with your first purchase when you click the link in the description. Comprehensive support for your gut health, energy, and more in 1 scoop. All in AG1 by Athletic Greens. Now on to the main video. For those of you that think about female sports executives, you might consider the likes of Jeannie Buss, owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, and proud recipient of the 2020 Mickey Mouse Bubble Ring. Some think that she's the first female owner to win a professional championship. Wrong. An earlier lady to win it all is, how do I put this gently, persona non grata in baseball circles. This was once Marge Schott's world, and we merely lived in it, as everyone was afraid of what stupid shit she'd do next. Margaret Univers was born on August 18, 1928 to a family of dreams and ambition. Daddy always wanted a boy to pass the family lumber business to, but he was cursed with only having daughters. So Marge was the lucky recipient to get big boy pants and learn to become a man. Ish. That ascension to pseudo-manhood was complete in 1952 when she tied the knot with Charles Schott, a man of upstanding family, and one who gave his wife a loveless and childless marriage, until he died of a heart attack in 1968, allegedly in his mistress's bathtub. His death was Schott's gain, as Marge was now the owner of a sprawling empire of increasingly complacent American cars, plus a few other things. Over the years, she would slowly build a cult of personality in Southwest Ohio. Most Cincinnatians knew of her as that car lady with the dogs on TV, but she wanted more. Marge became a minority owner of the Reds in 1981. 3 years later, she gave what she called a Christmas gift to the people of Cincinnati. She gained majority control of the team. Schott paraded that she saved the Reds, even if the previous owners would sell to no one outside of the city. As this female Caesar proudly strutted to the press, all Marge had to do was let Pete Rose carry the brunt of the franchise. We all know what ended up happening there. The whole gambling on games thing forcing baseball to swing the banhammer for a walk-off grand slam. Marge suddenly went from a shadow figure to the alpha and omega of the Reds organization. She put on a convincing public persona. The local underdog, the every woman who sat in the front row of games, never raising ticket or concession prices at the ballpark, eager to schmooze with fans and talk to the kids. Oh, she loved kids. She never had any of her own, but she felt a sense of duty to help them in any way she could. Mostly because she felt her sister was part rabbit. She only requires that you don't bring Macho Man Randy Savage onto the TV broadcast or else she'll send her nephew to kick him out of the stadium. This innocent facade is deceiving. Give it a little time to cook and something becomes quite obvious. She's insanely cheap. Even Ebenezer Scrooge would have been disgusted at some of her actions. Consider what happened after the 1990 World Series. The Cincinnati Reds had only won the damn championship by convincingly sweeping the A's. You'd think an owner would be elated for such an accomplishment. But they did it too quickly in her eyes. They robbed her of profit. Therefore, she would rob them of food and drink. They had to go out and get hamburgers. At least order them some pizza or something. Jesus Christ. Maybe send one to Eric Davis. He was only the star player who lacerated his fucking kidney and lost 2 pints of blood during Game 4. He nearly died, but the Reds kinda forgot about him recovering in California. After not answering his calls, Eric had to pay $15,000 out of his own pocket to fly back to Cincinnati. Marge eventually paid him back, but felt his antics ruined the World Series for her. She stuck with the guy for 5 whole years after all. It didn't fare much better on the home front. Think an owner so scrupulous that she'd rummage through the garbage to make sure every scrap of paper had writing on both sides. Think someone that had to personally sign off on every check worth more than $50. Think charging money for day-old donuts and probably stale coffee. After 5 p.m., it was 55-degree time in the office. Air conditioning in the summer. That's as much of a luxury as any sort of customer service and community relations department. Both got under Schott. During the player strike in '94, she canceled bathroom cleaning service. Because who needs cleanliness when everything is shit? For someone who knew jack and shit about baseball, she thrust herself into financial decisions in every enterprise. Marge paid some of the lowest salaries for front office personnel in baseball. To her, scouting was an unnecessary expense. After all, why pay for someone to just watch games all day? She knew nothing of the players on her team, the people employed under her, the history of the Reds organization. But that won't stop her from scrimping on the farm system, player development, and any sort of good marketing. Hot dogs were still $1. Nobody cared about that other pesky stuff. Even in her chain smoking and hard drinking, she demanded the cheap stuff. You have to back up what you preach, right?
We're dedicating this World Series to our wonderful women and men over in the Far East.
Better yet, she openly defied the commissioner doing this and first referred to the area as the Middle West. Not bad for someone who told the First Lady that she hated baseball. Like she pried into pure cringe, she pried into many aspects of her players' personal lives. She opened every package sent to them and tapped every phone to listen in on calls. She'd hire private investigators to spy on players entering and exiting team flights, buses, and hotels. Marge did not approve of the players' potential philandering with those vile, fertile women. Is it any wonder why she tried not to hire women of childbearing age? Speaking of philandering, that manager and GM from the 1990 World Series winner? They were gone by the end of 1992. Lou Piniella had enough of shot and fucked off while GM Bob Quinn was fired 2 days later. During her reign, she went through 7 managers, and 5 in her final 6 years of control. Davey Johnson was living with a woman he wasn't married to. It doesn't matter that they tied the knot a few months later, an example needed to be made. He'd be fired no matter what happened in 1995. They had made the playoffs but lost in the NLCS. So Davey floats down the Ohio. He needed to make way for the true prizes of the organization. Her dogs. Majestic, slobbering, energetic St. Bernards that took the mantle as unofficial mascots of the franchise. In true creativity, she would christen them as Shotzi. And Shotzi too. These doggos were offered more freedom and autonomy than any of her staff or players were allowed. Riverfront Stadium was their doghouse, interrupting players, eating clubhouse food, and pissing and shitting anywhere they desired. That included the field of play. Nothing like a puddle of pee on AstroTurf to get a man alert and ready for the game. The dogs themselves were given royal treatment. Television appearances, official merchandise, rally calls on the scoreboard, birthday parties at the goddamn stadium, where Marge would flip shit that the celebration wasn't received well enough. They were so divine that when Shotzi would eat mayo out of a public bowl, Marge would simply stir it up so no evidence of the dog befouling it was known. Whenever they shot in the office, she had the GM Bob Quinn clean it up in a flexing of power. The original Shotzi was put to sleep in 1991. Was buried in Marge's backyard with a Reds cap on its head, and given a press conference after the fact. Shotzi 2 was so rambunctious that he was banned from Riverfront Stadium in 1993 due to numerous complaints from players. Maybe it was from her belief that they were a good luck charm. Marge would frequently rub the cut hair of her dogs on managers and players. It worked in the 1990 World Series, you know. She'd send bags of their hair to them in the belief that it was the key to success. Even with the original Shotzi. Years after its death, that was somehow kept by Shot after the pup was free from the shackles of life. I believe Cincinnati was wishing for that same freedom. You see, Marge Shot had the innate abilities of having no filter whatsoever while never knowing when to shut the fuck up. The thing is that Marge was what we call a racist. A massive racist. And not the 2020 version of that she posted rap lyrics on Twitter in high school, but by 1920 standards. Tim Sabo, a former comptroller of the team, brought it to light in a lawsuit after he was fired in 1991. She allegedly refused to hire black people. Some stated that she'd rather hire a trained monkey than one of them. That's just in the front office, though. On the field, she was fine with guys like Eric Davis and Dave Parker, men that she would refer to as million-dollar N-bombs. I'll leave it up to you as to what that N-word is. In terms of Martin Luther King Day, a relatively new holiday at the time, she called it N-Bomb Day. No, Marge, nobody in their right mind is calling it that. She claimed that she said the N-bomb in jest. She never asked anyone if it was offensive, felt that everyone said it, and considered it, quote, a Southern expression. She was born in Ohio, a Union state. The same came to her beliefs about jewelry and earrings on the field. Because as we all know, only fruits wear earrings. Long hair, no dice. She can't tell if it's a girl or a boy. And don't get her started on facial hair. The only option is clean shaven. In one instance, she'd only sign Rolly Fingers if he shaved off his fantastic mustache. Then he talked about her St. Bernards negatively and all was fucked. Baseball tried everything it could to tolerate her, but these comments forced their hand. In 1993, she was given a year's suspension and a $25,000 fine. To go to games, she'd have to buy a ticket. Poor thing. She'd also be forced to go through cultural sensitivity training, which worked about as well as having an allergy to pet dander in the Reds' locker room. She called the whole affair a witch hunt, and that she wouldn't have been punished if she had a penis. Yes, that's totally the reason why they suspended you, Marge. Perhaps Reds fans were thinking the same thing by 1996. Years of dealing with Marge Schott's bullshit had worn thin on them, and they responded by not coming to the ballpark. Even then, opening day is always a special day, but this one was special in a way no one desires. In the first inning, home plate umpire John McSherry collapsed on the field of play and tragically died of a heart attack. Obviously, the game was postponed after some consideration, but Marge was incensed. In her words, "I don't believe it. First it snows and now this. I feel cheated. This isn't supposed to happen to us, not in Cincinnati. Nobody feels worse than me. Not to consider that someone literally fucking died and nobody should be expected to continue playing after witnessing such a traumatic event. Marge was pissed at this inconvenience. How dare this man die during one of their games? Can't they play with only 2 umpires? Everyone may be livid at the insensitivity of her comments, but she'll send a bouquet of flowers to his funeral that were regifted from the team's TV affiliate. They were wilting. Marge will even go out of her way to apologize to the umpires before a game a few weeks later. They weren't the umpires at that game, and it was right before the first pitch. They appreciated the virtue signal so much that they walked away from her during it. It's that damn media, she swears. Other teams' scores? No one needs to know that shit. That costs $350 a month. Besides, why should someone care about one game when they're watching another? She'd reverse course on this after the 6th game. She'd blame her employees for it. The same ones that would now have to call into other games and listen to the radio for scores. If only that could save her from herself. Come early May, we witnessed the most heinous case of foot and mouth syndrome that it shattered her brain stem. It was known that Marge had Nazi memorabilia in her house. She said it was gifted to her by a colleague. Or was it sent back home by her cousin serving in World War II? Either way, it led many to wonder if she was a goose stepper in training. Do you know what makes this worse? Her own words. Everything you read, when Hitler came in, he was good. Everyone knows that Hitler was good for Germany in the beginning. He just went too far. Marge? You went too far in your own right. It's not like this was isolated. She mentioned the same thing a few years earlier to the New York Times. And this wasn't an off-cuff remark, this was during an interview with ESPN. Because as we all know, Hitler was very good for Germany. Especially in the beginning. The man built some phenomenal roads in his time. Nobody cares what those money-grubbing Jews think. They aren't smarter than her, just sharper. Quite bold to state when a segment of team owners, including the league's commissioner, are Jewish. It got worse when an article from Sports Illustrated was released a few weeks later. Behold wonderful hit singles like using a cartoonish accent to discuss a meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister, criticizing Asian American teens for outperforming others, wondering why female reporters are allowed in the locker room, and bashing Jose Rio for sitting on his butt and collecting money for nothing. Jose Rio had suffered a catastrophic elbow injury in 1995 and wouldn't pitch in the majors for another 5 years. At this point, baseball had enough. There would be permanent consequences for her actions. In June, she'd be banned from all team operations for over 2 years. A week later, she'd be banned from Riverfront Stadium for fears of meddling. In hindsight, those would be her last public moments in baseball.
And there was much rejoicing.
Don't worry, Marge still has her successful car dealerships to manage. She was forced to sell them in 1997 due to falsifying sales figures, you say. These fake buyers included Reds employees. Sounds about right. After relentless pressure and an expiring agreement with ownership, Schott sold all but one share of the Reds in 1999 and lived out the rest of her days in seclusion, chain smoking and drinking Kamchatka vodka. Learning nothing, she blamed the rest of baseball's owners for her fate. If only she had stood with the boys a little more, she'd have been fine. Marge Schott died on March 2nd, 2004 at the age of 75. And few shed tears for her. Even then, she had good qualities. She gifted large sums of money to animal shelters and children's charities. She was one of the most loyal donors to the Cincinnati Zoo, especially their elephant exhibits. She was a fervent supporter of Cincinnati schools, parks, and universities. For the city, she was the exact opposite of what she was for baseball. Marge was all about families and children, but treated the Reds like they were infected with plague. Her former employees called her a cheap psycho, spiteful, mean-spirited, and evil, and the single worst person I've ever known. Despite her hilariously inept reign, Marge Schott was a pioneer, like it or not. She was one of the few female sports owners that bought her way into ownership. And she did win a World Series, albeit in spite of her actions. As her employees called her a miserable cur, many laid claim that she was stuck in the 50s. Which century? If she's rotting in hell right now, I hope it's with an army of elephants and St. Bernard shitting on its AstroTurf fields. Marge, close us out.
Thank you for doing it. Now let's go into that song that we love. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. So it's root, root, root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. So it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball